What is the best time to consume protein? If your goal is to shift some body fat, try and improve your overall health and performance through the day, I'm going to walk you through three key parts. One being the timing of protein in your day, two being the amount, and three being how frequent should those meals or the perfect sort of meal structure through the day. I want to walk you through all three of them. If you don't know me, my name's Olly. I'm the founder of The Body Reset, and we work with thousands of busy professionals to get their body and energy back on their side when things just aren't working like they used to. And a big part of that isn't just about restricting food, eating less, training harder. It's about the structure of meals in our days so that we can fuel and perform at a high degree. When we get that part right, when we feel healthy and have that level of vitality in our day, body fat and trying to improve body composition simply becomes a byproduct. And I think that shift in relationship is very much required when you get into your mid-40s, 50s, but is also a much more sustainable way of looking at health, not through the lens of just restricting, but rather looking at what are the key requirements my body needs. All right, so the first one I want to address will be timing, because that's likely why you clicked on the video. And I think the big part that we want to address is this overall relationship with what does protein do. It is the building blocks of muscle, yes, but also has a significant impact on the ability to look after and support a key hormonal function, a key immune system, and it's also going to have a significant impact on those hunger cues in your day as well. So there's a lot of different ways strategically that we can use it to achieve different outcomes, but the timing aspect I want to look at first and foremost is going to be one, cravings and energy, and then two is going to be more the recovery component. Now, the biggest one, if I'm addressing overall energy and cravings, will be more so your first meal of the day, looking to get at least 30 grams of protein, and this is going to be body weight dependent, but at least 30 grams of protein in the morning before 10 a.m. For most people, that's going to be a pretty standard requirement for us so that we can really help stabilize blood sugar and improve a lot of the food choices that we make throughout the day. It's also typically the meal that for most people, they're simply not getting enough protein in, hence why we recommend and keep a strong focus on breakfast being the thing we change first. If your main goal is performance and recovery from workouts, then it's going to be more the emphasis of when we're getting a meal in post-workout. Now, I've seen far too many people, especially with young kids, run through their day looking after work, looking after kids, and then finally squeezing in the workout once their kids have gone to bed after dinner and no longer eating post-dinner. And I think that's probably one of the worst things you could do. Of course, working out is better than not working out, but it's impacting recovery significantly if you're not having a meal post-workout. So typically for most people, I'm going to stick between 20 and 45 minutes post-workout. Now, why the minimum in regards to not immediately after the workout? The big reason here is looking after digestion. If you've just finished your workout and you're still huffing and puffing, you're still stressed out and rushed, your digestive capacity to really absorb those foods is going to be lower, and you're typically going to find that over time you may build up more sensitivities, or you're just not breaking foods down. It's more stressful to your gut. So if you've followed us for any length of time, you know we're a huge fan of looking at gut health and that 5 deep breaths, that ability to calm down before you eat is so important to making sure you can digest a meal. Regardless of how perfect this meal is in front of you, how healthy it is, if you're not in the right state when digesting, you are going to limit or inhibit your ability to absorb that properly. So the goal is between 20 and 45 minutes. Now, if you're male, you have a little bit more wiggle room. I'd suggest up to about 60 minutes, you'll be okay. But typically, if you're still having a regular menstrual cycle or you're in the middle of perimenopause, I'd very much keep the limit towards 45 minutes. We can really look after that recovery as much as we need and really have that protein sparing impact as well. Okay, so key big parts, you're going to see an emphasis towards higher protein first thing in the morning as well as a post workout. Now, ideally, the big thing here that I'm looking at is I could give you a really strong argument to why protein in your last meal of the day is also very helpful, alongside potentially some carbohydrates to really nourish and fuel the body, improve sleep quality, and really help how you show up the following day. So what I'm really highlighting that the frequency of protein throughout the day is also a huge part of that. But to truly answer that question, we first need to look at our total amount that we're consuming in a day. And out of the thousands and thousands of people that I've consulted in their nutrition plans, I could probably count on two hands how many people have already been having an adequate amount of protein, and there's other impacts that we need to address. So it's a pretty big part of where you could likely improve your nutrition is increasing your protein. And to give you a metric to work with, if we're working in kilos, we're going to look about 1.8 to 2 grams per kilo of body weight. If you're in pounds, then we're going to look at 1 gram per pound of body weight. Looking at that metric as a rough starting point gives you an awareness of potentially how much room you have to go to bump up that protein. Now, say if just for ease of a calculation, you're 100 kilos, we're now looking for 200 grams, for example. We're going to look at probably not doing that in one meal. That's a significant amount of protein. So there's two things to break down here to really bring awareness to what 200 grams really looks like, right? Because if you have 200 grams of chicken, that is not 200 grams of protein. It's 200 grams of meat. Chicken is roughly around 30% protein. So if you're having 200 grams, you've got 60 grams of protein. If it's a red meat like beef or potentially lamb, you might be looking at 25 grams of protein. So for 200 grams, you're having 50 grams of protein. And some fish is around that sort of 20 to 22-ish percent. So again, that's going to be slightly lower again, 44 grams or so. All right. So that in itself is a big awareness. And if you know that, you're ahead of so many people around your ability to sort of know how much protein you're having in the day. So have a little think about what you're currently eating in the day and what you might be hitting. For most people, they barely get over 50 grams a day, right? That's why they're tired. That's why their muscle mass continues to decrease. That's why they've got no energy and why they've got all the craving, right? So really getting, above that 100 grams, moving into the 150, maybe 200 grams, gets you to a place where you're starting to really look after a lot of these key functions like that hunger, like that strength and muscle sparing, as well as, of course, recovery. Now, I will say that looking towards an ideal body weight or a lean body mass more than current body fat, if you're above sort of 25, 30, 40% body fat, because you will get to a place that you're having so much protein based on total body weight that unless you're very well muscled at 100 kilos, that might be a lot of food. Okay. So maybe if you're, for example, you're 100 kilos, you're 20% body fat, you can maybe start in that space of around 80 kilos as your lean body mass. Therefore, about 160 grams is a good starting point if you feel like that's a lot of meat, a lot of protein to start with. So the big part we've looked at is timing. There's kind of three big points I've brought up in the day, which kind of coincide with first thing in the morning before 10 o'clock, you're getting in a good 30-gram serving. You're having a big emphasis towards wherever you work out in the day, you are having a good, again, 30, 40 grams protein post-workout within that 20 to 45 minutes, ideally. And then I'm always going to put that emphasis towards your last meal of the day to help improve blood sugar, recovery, and of course sleep quality. Those give you maybe could very well be already breakfast, lunch, dinner, but wherever that's placed in the day. Now, why 30 grams? That's very much on the lower end of the scale for many of you. Certainly if you're looking for 200 grams a day, it might be more like 50 grams, but 30 in most cases, if you're looking at a good high quality source like most meats or protein powders, etc., you're hitting a minimum threshold of some key amino acids like leucine, which are some of the key building blocks to actually get that protein synthesis, or a fancy way of saying being able to rebuild tissue. Okay, so knowing that you're really hitting that, of course, if you're using vegetarian sources, you do need to be a little bit more strategic in regards to combining protein sources to be a little bit more complete. In most cases, you do have to have more because of the lack of bioavailability. But being able to look at that as three key parts, you'll be in a significant place to improve your recovery, that blood sugar, and in most cases, your overall structure of meals being a higher protein percentage, typically lower carbohydrate, which has a huge impact on your ability to improve metabolism and shifting body fat. Okay. Now, the big thing that you probably want to spend a little bit of time on here is what that looks like throughout your day to truly hit 150 grams or 200 grams of protein. So to give you an idea, one of the key things that we'll address with a lot of clients will be, what does breakfast look like? And that's always going to be the biggest one. So if you want access to some of the recommendations that we give quite commonly to breakfast, then you'll simply be able to see a link in, if you're listening to this on podcast or on YouTube, you'll see a link below to download our protein options. It'll give you 5 or 6 things to try out, typically for breakfast, that just might be a bit of an alteration to what you're currently doing. So if you're truly just looking for tactical ideas to shift your breakfast, click that link, check it out, and I hope that will help you out. But with breakfast, to kind of walk you through what we'll show in this document, eggs is quite a common thing for breakfast, right? Now, of course, if you're doing oats or toast, etc., a lot of carbs, very little protein. So moving towards something a little bit more protein dominant is going to be a nice recommendation to start with. But something like eggs is about 6 grams per egg. So even with 3 eggs, you're only hitting 18 grams. You're still significantly under our key threshold. So looking at adding a side of some form of meat, that could be some salmon. It could be, if you wanted to do some beef or some other sort of lean meats, you could add that there. In some cases, it could be a case of doing 2 eggs and 4 or 5 egg whites, for example. It could be even a case of adding in some edamame beans or something else to kind of bring that protein total, so you're at least hitting that 30 gram minimum for breakfast. Now, throughout the day, if you're doing some chicken salads or you're doing some, for dinner, doing your classic sort of meat, veg, and some carbs, you'll be in a spot where those are typically easy to hit once you've got an awareness of how much you're really aiming for in regards to the measurement. But typically, breakfast becomes that threshold. So overall, hopefully this gives you a nice little overview of the timing aspect that we've considered, the amount of protein that maybe you're not currently hitting, and of course that frequency aspect of at least highlighting that building this over 3, 4, or maybe even 5 meals for the day is a much more achievable, much easier way to hit those protein targets throughout your day without having to have a significant meal in one serving. And we typically see this more helpful if you are looking to drop body fat, you're looking to improve recovery. Some considerations is obviously timing and the preparation around meals. You might want to stick to 3 and have those bigger meals if you are a bit rushed or the type of work you do. But again, all the more reason to really focus on that digestive capacity and the ability to really breathe before the meal, look after your ability to absorb that nutrients so you're not just eating meals that your body can't absorb. All right, so I hope that helps. If you want me to dive deeper into a more tactical breakdown of exactly what those meals would look like over those 4 or maybe even 5 meals, I will absolutely do so. Just let me know in the comments. But this should be at least an initial awareness of some of the key things that most people don't look at, which is a metric to know what is the key number I should be even looking for. And then of course, that simple consideration, simple yet commonly misunderstood, of 100 grams of chicken is not 100 grams of protein. It may only be about 30%, 30 grams, 25 grams or so that we're looking to hit. So it's substantially more than most people are eating, and being one of the foundational steps that allow you to get your body and energy back on your side. If you're over 40 or really anything over 25, this should be one of your key considerations to really looking after your energy, your health, and really under 25 as well. You're in a building block phase to build more nutrition awareness. So hope this helps. We'll build on this more if you like, but please check out that protein options below if that's for you. Until next time, team, hope you had an amazing week. We'll see you then.